Hey guys, just waiting for the other folks to join in. Hey Dom,
Hey Ziad, how's
you
it going?
doing pretty well. How's your day been?
Nice, nice. Well, it's just started. It's 9:30
Hey
here, so
guys.
yeah, pretty
Are
fresh.
are you also on the West Coast right now? It's 9:30
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Currently in LA.
nice, nice. Yeah, Seattle's the same time zone as LA. Yeah. Hey Louise, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Doing pretty well. Can't complain. Yeah, well, today we're going to be talking about how to basically succeed as a software engineer and like tips and tricks to have a successful software engineering career. So I think we can kind of jump right into it. And for everybody that's just joining in, definitely feel free to drop any questions around tech or around our specific topic today, and we'll definitely get to answering some of those questions. And yeah, with that, we can kind of get started. So since this topic's about what it's like to have a kind of successful career in tech or how to succeed as a software engineer in particular, I think it would be nice to start out with just like anybody who's new here to us go around, just introduce like what our role was when we either work in tech or currently work in tech, and what we like, yeah, what our roles were. So like I can get started, for example. So I'm currently a software engineer in tech. I work in the Seattle area at a company called Okta, which is kind of like a medium-sized company in the area. And I work on like the product side of things, so more full stack development, web development, backend engineering, stuff like that. And I've been doing it for around a year now, and I've had some internship experience as well as a software engineer. So that's kind of what I do. Dom, you want to tell the audience a little bit?
Sure. So currently I am self-employed, but before my last job I was working for a tech startup in London, and I was a senior front-end engineer there, and basically they were trying to digitalize real estate in a way that whenever you want to buy a house, you need to go through all the legal processes and everything. That takes a lot of time and money. So they wanted to like modernize that and just like build APIs for that and make it possible in a few days, not like a few months and way more money. So yeah, it was it was definitely an interesting company with like an exciting mission. But we'll talk about more details later. Of course, this is just an intro.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. Louise, you want to tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so I am not a software engineer, like you guys, not an engineer. I've just, yeah, I make content here at Practicum. I did learn most concepts of front-end development, so I do have experience with programming, like in web development at least.
Mhm.
But to say I did a hardcore software engineering jobs like you guys did, no, I haven't. But yet here I am in tech, heavily haunted by the imposter syndrome, but we fight every day.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome interest, guys. I appreciate it. I think we can kind of, which is, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. Um, yeah, someone called me, so I was hoping that didn't mess everything up. Yeah, so I think the first question we can kind of start with is, what are some like habits that have helped you succeed in tech, or either in a software engineering job, or do we just like in general, like learning tech, for example? What are some like habits that you've gotten into that have helped you? Um, yeah, like succeed. So I think like it would be pretty useful for all of us to kind of answer this one. So like for for me, for example, a habit that I've got is definitely like asking a lot, like forcefully asking a ton of questions of people that have more experience than I do. So like at my current job, For example, there's like a leveling system. There's senior engineers, there's staff engineers, there's like even within those there are different levels, and a lot of the folks that are on the upper levels definitely have either worked on like bigger projects or taken on bigger scope or something like that. So consistently like asking them questions, and like when there's something that I don't know, I found that it's like a lot quicker to ask questions than it is to like really try for so long to figure it out on your own and then try to ask questions. And for the most part, like most people are friendly. So getting a lot of mentorship as a software engineer has definitely been a habit that I've tried to build. There's also another thing where it's like reading into latest technologies, which has really helped me. Like, if there's a technology out there, like a new package that we're using or new library or something like that, instead of just using like the API itself, like instead of just like going and using it, like go like take some additional time to understand like what it's doing underneath the hood, how it works, why we're using it, what are some like competitive technologies, and like what are the pros and cons essentially. So like if you're using a database like Postgres, for example, like why Postgres? Why not MySQL? Why not like Cassandra, for example? Like there's so many other technologies. So like really having a foundational understanding, I think, is what differentiates like successful engineers from just like a normal engineer that wouldn't advance as much. So I think those are the habits that I've actively tried to build as well. But yeah, what about you, Dom?
From my habits, definitely, as you mentioned, questions. If I had to change one thing about the beginning of my career, that would be asking questions, because I was like, yeah, I wouldn't want to ask a lot of questions. People think I'm stupid, blah blah blah. I think many of us go through that stage, but no, like literally ask anything, because the field is so big that you just need to ask, and nobody will think you're stupid. Even if somebody thinks you're stupid, it doesn't care, because you learn. They will still explain it to you, so it doesn't matter. Just like focus on you need to focus on gaining the knowledge and asking questions. That is the right thing, because asking not just about coding but about anything. You can ask questions about designing or project management or processes. Just yeah, definitely ask questions. The other skill, I can say that it's skill, but what is extremely important, and was for me, was mentorship. Again, because the field is so massive, you just can't learn everything by yourself by trial and error. Otherwise you would be learning for 200 years. So you need to learn from experienced engineers, and there's a huge difference, for example, if you learn from a bad senior versus a good senior. Because a bad senior, he can work, or they can work for like 10 years, but still their knowledge doesn't need to be anything special. You think they are authority because they're seniors, and then you learn from them, and then you realize that's not actually the best solutions. It's just like it was working for them in the last 10 years, and uh, but yeah, it's not the best solution. Versus learning from great seniors, you can immediately get access to that great engineering knowledge that's been accumulated for years in their life, and they've been getting knowledge from more experienced engineers, so the quality of that knowledge is impressive. And that's why I've seen engineers that are ambitious, that have 1 to 2 years of working experience, with great mentorships in great companies, and they are more capable than people who have 10 years of experience, just because the field is so massive and you can learn by yourself. So you can't reinvent the wheel. You literally need to absorb the information that's already available and need to seek good information. So yeah, I would say mentoring and asking questions. That's those two things, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree for sure. For everyone just joining in, we're talking about tips and tricks of succeeding in tech as a software engineer, and it's a general discussion. So definitely feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we'll get to them. I already see one that's in there. We're gonna get to it in a sec for sure. And if there are more, yeah, definitely put them in there. We're super excited to answer your questions. So yeah, just to finish things off, Dweez, what do you think? What are some habits that you've kind of helped you succeed in tech or learn tech? And
Yeah. So I think As long as you're open to learning new things, you will do fine. like like what Dom said earlier, you have the senior engineer. They've been working with the same technology for over 10 years. Ideally, you are supposed to be developing as well, right? Because that's what tech is about. It's about the development of new technologies. So I think it is important that developers also, outside of what they do at work, they should be. I'm not saying you should be dedicating 50 uh, 3 hours or hours a day on learning like about other things, but you should try to keep yourself updated. There are tech blogs you can read. There are resources being spread around on GitHub. You A lot of developers are constantly trying to be learning, and I think that's a good habit you should build if you want to work for the long term in tech.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Constantly learning is super important to staying relevant in this industry in particular. Yeah, let's jump. There was a question in the chat real quick that we can answer. So is being an app slash web developer enough to be a software engineer? There's a little bit of a segue off our topic, but yeah, what do you guys think? Is being an app web developer enough to be a software engineer? I think instantly yes, but I'm curious. What do you guys think?
Well,
Yeah, yeah, I'll go first. So I think as long as you are like in the designing process, like you're building a system, some form of system, you can consider it engineering. And yeah, when you're building a web app or a website, you are designing a system, in my opinion. So yes, it is. I would say it's software engineering.
Hmm.
I agree, 100% agree. Because yeah, web development, web is really big today. Web before web, that was debatable because the web was static and front end was just like ugly and boring. We didn't have front end frameworks. We didn't have powerful devices on the client, especially mobile phones. So nothing especially was going on the client side. But today it's crazy powerful, and you have extremely complex applications. I don't know, just look at Google Docs, which are in the browser and they behave basically like MS Word. Word, of course, Word has more features, but for like 95 or even more percent of users, all features from Google Docs are enough. So it's definitely, you're definitely a software engineer if you build apps or web development.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the purposes of like jobs that hire software engineers, pretty much anybody who like types code in one way or another or like designs systems, like we said, is a software engineer. So definitely you're on the right track there. We can I think we just got a question. So any advice for someone who won't is a PM. I guess okay. So any advice for someone who is a PM to be more technical? I think is the question. It's worded a little bit weird. Yeah. So I've actually worked with like technical PMs, so I can kind of answer this. There was one product manager in particular that wasn't even like a computer science graduate and was very technical, and I think that the key there was like fostering really good relationships with the engineers. So, for example, like this one experience I had was that during stand ups, like stand up meetings between the engineering manager and the other engineers, the product manager would almost like never show up. And when they did, it was, it was remote. They would join with their camera off and like not say a word. And it was like they were not engaged with the engineers whatsoever. They were more of like just a prioritization machine. Like you'd go to them when you want to know what to build next, rather than someone who is involved with the building of the product. But the other experience, like my current experience, is that like the product manager really comes to the stand-ups and asks really good questions, and it really helps when you've created that environment where like engineering doesn't like look down at a product manager for asking questions that might be seemingly simple for engineers. Like for example, they'll say like, I think we should build feature X, and like engineers will respond being like, like feature X is technically a little bit complex, and they'll ask for like an explanation, like why is it technically complex, and they gain a better understanding of what can be built and how long it can be built, and why, like they get a technical understanding of the features that they're asking engineers to build. So I think it's really important that product managers that want to go a little bit more technical, which is I think is super important, to really sit down with engineers and foster great relationships with them so that they can ask those questions without having, like, it's kind of like imposter syndrome in a sense. Like, you want to ask more questions so you can learn more and be able to um, really work cross functionally as a product manager. Um, yeah, that's my answer. Dom, Louise, you guys have anything to add?
Well, I agree with you. So yeah, I think you summarized it well. We can maybe answer. Boys, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, no, I agree 100% with what Ziad said.
Yeah, we
Cool.
can maybe I can maybe answer the second question I've seen here. Do you need maths for programming? And I would say in most situations you don't need maths directly, so you won't be doing like complex calculations and similar things. You will need maths more for game development because of course like physics is included there, so you'll not only need maths but physics and other sciences, but it's more like domain based. Just for pure programming, on front end it's rarely needed, sometimes more on back end, but actually that real math people are talking about is rarely, it's not I wouldn't say rarely, but it's not needed that often. However, if you are good at math, that definitely helps with programming, just because programming is logical and you need to have problem solving mindset, and that's what math at its core is, because math is the core of programming and math is the core of all the sciences. So if you're good at math, that will definitely help you see patterns in programming. But no, it's not necessarily important that you know complex maths and that only if you know complex maths you can do programming. Actually, maths is way more complex, like than programming. That's real maths, like above simple maths. That's like way more complex. My sister studies maths, and that's just like compared to computer science, that's way harder and way more abstract, just because it's core of everything. Programming is just like one application of maths, but math is the core. So yeah, you definitely don't need to be expert in maths to be a good programmer. But it helps if you like it, and it helps if you can understand it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. That I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. There's like two questions that are very similar, so we can kind of like answer both of them. So L Darwin says, "Hello, I want to start in the front end developer side. What framework is better to start?" And then another person is asking, "What is the best framework slash library for front end and its features?" Dom, I think you're the front end guru here. You want to take this one?
I can. I would say the best framework to start with is React, just because it's a great framework. Community is amazing. You'll probably love using it because, like, if you take a look at stats, many people who've tried React want to use it again and loved it. I'm the same. React is a great tool. I also love Vue. Vue is also great tool, loved by developers. But I would suggest React just because you'll get the job easier, because there are way more React jobs than Vue jobs, and both tools are just amazing. So yeah, definitely React. I wouldn't suggest Angular, for example, just because it's hard to get a junior job with Angular. It's used more for like large scale applications, enterprise applications. So there's not a lot of junior jobs. There are other things like Svelte, but Svelte is just like not used widely enough, so it's going to be way harder to get a job. So I would say React, the best way to break into front end development, and then you'll see when you learn React and when you learn front end concepts and when you learn how to build just a system of components, and when you learn about that component based mindset and everything else, you learn any other framework like much easily. So if you work with React for 2 years and then you need to switch to Vue, you'll switch like this, like literally in in a I've been using, for example, my journey was it started with like jQuery and Ember and then React, and I've been using them for years. And then when I needed to learn Vue, I was already an experienced engineer, and it took me like, I don't know, a week or two just to like learn the syntax, and because you already know everything, because many mindsets and core principles about building user interfaces are the same. So this is more just like syntaxes and some tricks and everything. But yeah, long story short, React.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the answer. I fully agree. React is the way to go. Dweez, I think this question is towards you. I don't know the answer to this. I'm curious if you know. Um,
Mhm.
Hey, Dweez, I'm telling myself that I have to move from or I have to move to C sharp from VB.net, and but I still can't jump. I don't know actually if that's a question, but what do you think, Dweez? Do you know it?
Yeah, I don't know what VB.net is,
Yeah.
but I do know the .NET framework. I, for me, I like when I went from the language to the framework. It was quite difficult for me to grasp the framework. And yeah, if that relates to your question, when learning the framework, you should approach it like you are learning all over. You're starting all over again. You should really approach it as you're learning a new language, let's say. But yeah, the jump from VB.net to C sharp, let me see in the chat right here. Yeah. Yeah, no, I am not sure exactly what is meant. I gave an answer to just in general how you should approach learning new frameworks and languages. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't know what it was either. Awesome. Thanks for the gifts, guys. Definitely appreciate it. This question says, "Hello, do I need a degree to be a front-end developer?" I can kind of answer this one, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. So to be a front end developer in specific, you or just a software engineer, honestly, like you don't necessarily need a degree if you're looking at like a 0 or 1 kind of answer. You can 100% like learn online, learn through boot camps or online courses, and learn how to be a developer and potentially even get a job like without a degree. But I will say, as somebody who does have like a CS background, having a degree gives you a lot of like foundational knowledge to be able that helps you like make technical decisions. It also like I've noticed that the way that like I write code versus the way that people who are coming out of just Coursera or something write code is a little bit different. I I think that having to go through a degree kind of requires you to take a lot of courses that as if like train your brain just to be a little bit like more logical and understand what's happening underneath the hood behind a lot of technologies. As I mentioned earlier, like researching pieces of tech is super important, and it helps when like operating systems and hardware and stuff like that. Like for example, if you go through like a boot camp, they're gonna teach you how to write React. They're gonna teach you how to like be a web developer, be a full stack developer, and like they're going to teach you what you need to know on the job, which is great. But like for example, like I took a distributed systems course in college that completely like changed the way that I think about like things like AWS and how do you like scale a system and stuff like that. And yeah, like even though that's not used like in an everyday job, though that kind of information and that kind of background, I think, is what helps like distinguish the really successful engineers from just the engine. And but at the same time, if you're like someone who just wants to get into tech in any way, boot camps and online courses are like the fastest way that you're going to be able to do it. But if you're still like really young, like you're like, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that, and like you have your whole life ahead of you still, and you kind of have that time to either choose to not go to college and try to get straight into tech, or like go through the college experience. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but like I think that going through the college experience is definitely worth it. It also depends where you are. Like I went to like an in-state college that was relatively cheap, didn't like impact. It wasn't like super hard to go to college, but I know that in a lot of places, like college might be insanely expensive and maybe unaffordable altogether. And other places, college is completely free. So it kind of also depends on your situation. But yeah, I'm curious. Do you guys agree? Do you guys completely disagree? What do you think?
I agree with some things, but I would say that it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a CS degree that you're going to be a better engineer. It's all individual. Because honestly, I've seen exceptional engineers that don't have any degrees. They're just like they've they've been learning everything either by themselves or in companies, and they dropped out of colleges because they realized it's just like they're consuming their time and money for no reason. That's a good thing because you can like adapt to that situation, and you can make anything out of it. So if you have time and money and you're young, well, why not go to college? But you have so many different options. It's not like you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. You need to go to law school. You need to go to medical school. But in software engineering, no, you can just like go to online tutorials, get a job, and be exceptional. Because yeah, personally, I know incredible engineers without any CS degree. So at the end, it's all about you and your motivation and your passion. If you really want to be it and you love doing it, you will perform better than engineers with CS degree. And that's what I saw. Because I even saw some occasions. I mean, I have a CS degree. I don't have anything against it, but I'm just saying that everything is possible because I saw many engineers without a CS degree, and they're motivated because it's not easy to break into tech from some completely other field. And they're so motivated that they start to learn, they get a job, and they just like rapidly grow. While for some CS engineers with a CS degree, for them it's a normal thing to get a job. It's nothing special because they already have a CS degree and now they got a job and now they're like growing steadily. They're growing, but not as fast as some engineers with just like they're crazy and they just want to grow and they break into tech from something completely unrelated and they're so motivated and then they got their first job and they just like continue to grow. So I would say it's up to you. It's good that you have all the possibilities. And yeah, up to you. If you're motivated, if you really want to break into tech or learn to code and be an engineer, then like any path you choose, like it's fine. It's like eventually it's gonna be fine because you'll end up in a good company, working on great projects, learning a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you remind me, like my like current kind of like lead engineer, he came from like a nuclear engineering background, and he started out working on like rocket ships and just like nuclear power plants for a few years and stuff like that. So very, very different background, and then came in, and right now he's like the lead engineer for our team. So he's doing all right. So that definitely makes
Yeah,
sense.
but that, yeah, it really does. It's what Dom said, right? Like you spent, I don't know, a year learning everything you needed to learn. That's tough, man. It's like you have to have a lot of self-control, a lot of self-regulation that goes into it. So when you get there, you will probably be more motivated than compared to the ones around you. So yeah, I would say the same thing as you guys. If you are motivated, if you feel like you have what it takes to just break into tech without going to university, I would say just go for it. Just give it a shot and see how far you get. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think something that you kind of hinted on as well is that, like, even before, if you do decide, like, you want to go down the college path, or you do decide that you're just, like, interested in tech, you can definitely get started, like, before you go to college. Because I know a lot of people that, like, will go to college to study CS because, like, they're interested in either, like, the money in it or the person, like, just some aspect of it that isn't around them actually liking it, and then they'll go in, they'll realize that it's not for them, and they'll have wasted like a little bit of time, potentially money, stuff like that. So I think it's important to know that you can really get started even before you get in like a college environment to see if you like it or not. Like that's what I ended up doing. Like even though I went to college, I was coding way before like I ended up majoring in a CS degree. So I would definitely see if you like it beforehand by doing some side projects, learning online, stuff like that. Um, cool. I think yeah, we had a question. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Um, what are the unspoken soft skills that are needed to succeed in tech? So obviously the hard skills like the coding, the programming, all that kind of stuff, we can leave it out. So what do you guys think are the soft skills in order to succeed?
I would say one of them is communication. So you need to, you're working with people, you're working in a team, and you need to know how to communicate with them. You need to show people what are you doing, because it's often that software engineers are working on something, they think they're so smart, they're doing the great job, and they probably are, but nobody else knows that because they're just like behind their screens, not communicating to their project managers, to their team members, and they think that everyone will just know what they do. So like communication is extremely important. Other skill is prioritization. What many developers also do is that they have one task and then they focus on that task and ignore everything else. They just want to finish their task as soon as possible. And somebody asks them a question, and they're like, they get back to them in 2 hours, and they solve their problems in 5 hours. And it's not a great thing. So you need to know when somebody asks you something that might be their blocker, and if you respond to their blocker in 5 hours, they're not gonna be that happy. They're gonna be, yeah, he's unresponsive, he doesn't reply, he blah blah, and that's just because you were behind your screen and thinking that your feature is so important. So I would say prioritization. If people ask you for something and it's simple, just do it immediately. They will be really happy when you solve their complex blocker in 2 minutes after they asked you. And to be honest, it doesn't matter if you finish your feature you've been working on for 2 weeks. If you finish it at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., that's not important. But if in that extra 1 hour you helped 7 people to clear their blockers, they will be really happy with you, and you will just be that really responsive and positive guy, and they will always be like, yeah, he knows how to solve every problem, he's smart, everything. But just because of that different approach with prioritization, I had the same problem. So I was like behind the screen, somebody asked me something, I'm like, no, I'm in my flow mode with my noise canceling headphones, and I'm just like solving my feature now, and I can't reply to anyone. And then even if I replied, I didn't put a lot of effort in it because I was just like, I don't want to lose the flow or anything, blah blah. And then like I just wasn't doing the great job helping other people, and they thought that I'm doing a bad work and that I'm unresponsive. So at the end, I started to prioritize especially my long lasting tasks. They're last on my list. Like everything that has to do with helping other people, especially that help. And it often takes like 5 minutes. So it's not like you need to spend 5 hours with them. If it takes like a couple of minutes, do it immediately, and people will just start to see you as a crazy, crazy responsive person. Once again, if you work on a feature on a task for like 6 hours, and if you help 5 people for 5 minutes, that's 25 minutes. If you do it at the end, that means that they waited for hours. And if you do it when they asked, that's night and day difference, especially if you do it consistently. So yeah, prioritization, communication, really important for success.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was someone on I saw on LinkedIn that said the secret to succeeding in tech is working hard and being nice. Like it's just that simple. You be nice to other folks and you work hard yourself, and you're gonna do all right. Dweez, what do you think? What are some soft skills needed to succeed in tech?
Yeah, so Dom mentioned communication. That's really important. I always say if you communicate things properly, you just build a relationship with people, like you mentioned with the PM that had a good relation with his engineers. That's communication, right? So it will definitely help you. Second, you need to prioritizing, as Dom said. And the third soft skill I would like to bring is documentation. It's a, I'm sorry, it rhymes. I just think it's funny. But documentation, it's a good also soft skill to have. I don't know if you guys consider it a soft skill or a hard skill though.
I think it's fun. Yeah, it's part. I think
Yeah,
it's getting your ideas to other people. Yeah.
yeah. It's a form of communication, but I mean, if you are working on like a project, right? And to you, it seems like the most simple thing ever. For others, it may not be like that. So if you, let's say you just build an application, you should ideally have documented all the steps that you took. So others, especially the non-technical actors involved in the development, they can also understand what is going on. So that's what I would like to add to it's the communication, it's documentation, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I can't tell you how helpful it is when a lot of other folks like do both of that. They communicate effectively and write documentation about what they're working on. I just wanted to add, like, really quickly. I think an important soft skill, or let me just read this one. So, someone said important soft skill as well as listening. So many stakeholders have too many ideas that you have to then put together. Yeah, like definitely. I think that's like part of communicating, but it's like the opposite side of it. Like expressing your ideas, but also listening to other people's ideas and making sure that everybody's heard and you also understand the bigger picture of what's going on in your team. That's super important. What I wanted to mention is like being like a generally positive person is very, very important. I think especially when you're in like a high stress environment, like for example, if your company's like launching a new product or you have like a deadline you have to meet, or for example, if there's like an issue in production or something like that, those are pretty stressful situations. I can tell you definitely from experience, like having to meet together like late at night because there's like an issue in production or customers having issues or something like that. Like those are already stressful environments, and they're made even worse when you have like negative kind of people on your team. And I think the reverse of that is like being trying to be positive while still taking things seriously is like really important. Like for example, I had this one manager like a while ago when I was like an intern too. Like this was just at the intern stage, and the team was launching a new product and they had a pretty strict deadline. And at one point, we had like a demo with like the CTO of the company, and the demo went terribly. We demoed the new product, and it was just like there was a lot of bugs. It was slow. There was performance issues and stuff like that. And clearly, like it wasn't where we wanted to be. And honestly, like the exec team was fine. Like they didn't like they just told us, like you have to work on X, Y, and Z, and like this is what we want to see from you guys next time. So it was fine. It was just like good feedback. It was internal. Nobody was like affected in any way or something like that. But then the manager that I had, like in a one-on-one with him, he was just like ranting about how pissed off he was, and he was using all these like big words about frustration and like how terrible he thought we did and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, calm down. Like it's obviously we're in like a pretty fast-paced environment, and we want to get this out and stuff, but we should be generally happy while we're doing it. So I think like being positive is and like reinforcing the other folks around you who might be going through a rough time is really important because it fosters a pretty healthy working environment, which will like boost productivity all around anyways. I think a lot of people believe in like negative reinforcement where like you keep like you know basically stepping on somebody's toes until they like start performing, but I don't think that like in the majority of situations that's where you want to be at all. So I think that was a soft skill that really makes a difference in like a tech environment especially. Appreciate you guys, yeah, answering. And again, for everyone who joined or just joined or whatever, we're talking about tips and tricks of succeeding in tech, and we'd love to see questions and answer them. So definitely drop any questions you have around the topic or just tech in general in the comments, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Let me see if we um, missed anything. Yeah, someone asked, can I ask a question about ChatGPT? Definitely ask like any questions you guys have, and we'll definitely get to them. Um, we can okay. So there's a question that I think everybody has asked either in previous lives or in this live, which is how do you stand out from everyone else trying to get tech jobs right now? And the focus is like self development essentially. So obviously the tech market's a little tough right now, so I think it's important that we kind of answer this one. Anyone want to jump in right away? How do you stand out from everyone else in a tech environment?
I think to stand out, you should make content on social media. Definitely, it makes you stand out. So yeah, can you?
Yeah. I mean, standing out, like, yeah, you're not wrong there, but standing out in a tech environment is definitely a tough one these days, especially with like all the layoffs that have happened and stuff like that. I think that like there's some basic things when you're especially in the context of like applying to jobs. A lot of jobs will like have, for example, like descriptions that say like, must be good with Python, Node, and PHP or something. I don't know. Like these are the technologies that we use. So like you need to have experience with them. And I know a lot of folks that will like tailor their resumes, for example, so that they have those keywords in there. And the when they do submit their resumes to the job, they'll be one of the ones that like aren't filtered out with anyone else because they have the keywords that are in the job description. So I think like that's definitely a way to stand out. But I think the core of it is like when you're applying to jobs or when you're like in the tech world, you've all of a sudden entered the space of like marketing yourself essentially. Like you're trying to really sell yourself to the company because at the end of the day the company's making an investment in you and they expect a return on that investment. So like if they're hiring an engineer for $120,000 a year, they expect to get, like $200,000 of value out of you. So being able to sell yourself really matters. And the way you do that when you're applying to jobs is like structuring your resume in a way that really brings out the best in you, writing cover letters every time you can, and trying to really like when you're selling yourself, you have different aspects of it. You have your resume, your cover letter, but you could also have like a really well established LinkedIn profile. You could have, a GitHub profile, a portfolio website. Like all those things are little like basically signals that hiring managers are looking for when they're like
Yeah,
going out and scouting for people. So I think those definitely are reasons that or are ways that you can stand out early on.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. Especially like having projects on the site, like things apart from, yeah, just projects you have worked on the site throughout the years. These things help. It just shows that you have experience with programming outside of your job as well. I think that's nice.
Also,
Yeah.
I would add, like, I agree with everything the guy said. But I would add, just ignore all those bad news because that just makes you anxious and creates fear inside you. Because, yeah, it is the fact there are so many layoffs happening these days, and tech sounds like it's a bit crazy, but still, millions of companies are still hiring. So if you focus only on negative things and on layoffs and how you can get the job, you won't get the job because you can't focus on negative stuff and get positive stuff. So just ignore those news, focus on positive stuff, and be aware that yeah, tech is not going anywhere, even if current state of market isn't as ideal. It's just like it's crisis and tech bubble has bursted, so it's fine. But technology is still here. Technology will be with us, like even like way more developed than it is now. So like the future is definitely bright, and companies are still hiring today. So just focus on those facts and just like know that you only need to get and find one company that's good for you, and you'll get the job. So there's millions of them that hire. You can find that one. Don't focus on like layoffs and crazy things.
Yeah, for sure. I think like at the end of the day, like these layoffs and stuff like that have happened before, and it's nothing like the world is not ending or anything. This is like a cycle that tech companies go through. So inevitably things open back up and return to normal. I think yeah, someone in the chat wanted us to dive a little bit into open source devs and like I think just like the concept of open source in general. So I'm just curious, Dom or Dweez, have you guys done like open source development before, or what do you think about it, or what's your experience with open source?
I personally haven't done any open source development just because I love coding, but I also love other things. So that would be maybe a bit too much coding because I was working on some of my side projects, and then I would just be like coding all the time. I People who usually do open source are people who are just like crazy about coding, and that's their life, like real life mission and real life the love, the biggest love in life. So they work on side projects, they work in companies, they freelance, and they still do open source projects just because they love to code. They love to code so much. It's a good thing. Like you can try it out. There's definitely nothing wrong in trying it out. It's a nice experience. It can help you. Like you can put it on your GitHub profile. It's visible there on your resume and things like that. But yeah, personally, I haven't done it.
Yeah, someone said Dweez did a funny video about open source development at some point. Dweez, I think you're muted. You're muted, Dweez. Yeah.
Wiz did it, not me.
Yeah, I did
I
it.
saw it. I saw it. That's
Yeah,
why.
it's a video to give context. So a girl comes to a developer and asks him what does he do for a living, and he says that he's open source developer, and she just leaves because yeah, open source developers don't have a lot of money like other developers.
Yeah, that's funny. I think yeah, open source development in general though, like as Dom said, is a very good way to like get experience and also like I've even seen like some job applications saying like, link your GitHub and like tell us what open source projects that you've been involved with, if any. So it's a good way to like show off your coding ability and your interest in certain technologies before you even join a tech company. So if that's what you're into, it's definitely awesome. And by the way, like if you work with React, if you work with like Node.js or Python, like you're gonna use libraries that are open source in one way or another. So it's definitely like you're gonna have some exposure to it anyways. So that's great. Someone said I liked his video about tester engineers. I think is that you also, Dom? Do you know what he's referring to?
Yeah, probably.
Awesome. Okay, we have time for probably a few more questions. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them. Okay, there's one right there. What do you think of Angular? I think Dom kind of answered this earlier a little bit. Dweez, you want to jump in, or Dom, you want to explain again? Up to you guys.
Yeah, Dom can explain it better than I. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I
What do
can. I can. We were talking about that, but like to give just a short answer. Angular, it's a great framework because it is a framework, and you have a lot of, for example, React is just a library, and you need to add a lot of other library to make it like a full framework. And there are so many ways to do something in React. And if you're not experienced, and if you're creating large-scale applications with React, you can make a mess. With Angular, it's easier in a way, just because you have a set of standards that you need to follow. So it's easier, especially if you're unexperienced, to maintain those large applications. But yeah, Angular is used a lot for complex, bigger applications, for large scale enterprise applications. And if you think that you want to learn Angular to get your first job, that's not the best idea, just because there's not a lot of junior Angular jobs. So yeah, I definitely suggest React or even Vue, but probably React is the best way for your first job.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the answer. I think we both said we agreed with that. Someone asked, "What do you think of React Native?" And I can answer that real quick. I've worked a lot with it. React Native is awesome. I think I've been involved with it pretty early on since like 2018, 2017 or something when it was still version like point 4 or 5 I think at that time. And it's React Native is great for cross platform development. For anyone who's not familiar, it's like React, but for mobile, and it allows you to write both Android and iOS apps, and I think now even like Windows too, which is pretty cool. And it's very very powerful because you can instead of needing to learn like Swift or Android Studio or something like that or Kotlin to write these mobile apps or to write native apps, React Native definitely gives you a very as in the name, like a very native experience in the application that you're writing, which is pretty powerful. Like I've worked and seen very large scale applications using React Native. I think now because Facebook is the one behind it, I think like the Facebook mobile app and like pretty big parts of Instagram are React Native these days. So you can definitely build some pretty robust apps with it. So if you're interested in mobile or if you want to like deploy mobile apps and things like that, and you're already familiar with React or JavaScript, React Native is definitely one to consider. It's pretty powerful. I think alternatives are like Flutter, and I think even Microsoft has one called like Xamarin or something like that that you can try out. But I think React Native is definitely the one to go with there. But yeah, okay. I think we have probably time for like two more questions. So if you have anything, definitely drop it in the chat, and we will get to it. And even if we don't get to it, we save like all of these questions, so we'll get to it in a future live for sure. Um, cool. I think this is a cool question we could answer. Once I get my job in tech, how can I succeed in my role? And a follow up to that is, do I have to do things outside of my tech job to continually strengthen my skills? What do you guys think? Who wants to jump on this?
So after you get a job in tech, how to succeed in your role? Um, I would say like focus on mentors or on finding good mentors because alone like the field is just massive and alone you can do a lot if you're motivated, but if you have great mentors it's just like it's a cheat code literally because they will pour 5 years or 10 years of their experience into you in a couple of months. Like you won't be at their level, but you will understand how highly skilled engineers think. So I would say focus on mentors, and I would even suggest like if you get your first job and it happens like it's I wouldn't say it's often, but it sometimes happen that you break into tech and you get your first job and it's not that ideal job. It's just like it's a good company, it's an average company, it's nothing special, and you don't learn that much because they don't have any like nice mentoring processes, or some of them even don't review code. So you just like write code and merge it and push it directly to production literally, and it's just like nobody cares about it. And like for those first jobs, if you don't learn a lot, I would just suggest like start searching for a new job immediately. Like if you got a job, you're there for like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and you see that like you're just not learning enough and that nobody reviews your code, nobody mentors you even if you ask that for help, then just start searching for a new job. You don't need to quit. You don't need to quit your job, but just like start searching from the side and then switch to some better company. Because and at the end of the day, like you need to focus on your knowledge when you get your first job. That's like priority, and you're not uh, like yeah, you're nobody expects from you to do anything, to join a company and stay for 5 years. So focus on knowledge. If you can't get the knowledge, then look for something else, something better. Like don't settle. Many people do that. They settle for a low-paying job where they don't do great things, where they don't work with great people. But don't be that guy. If something bugs you and you don't like it, just like search something else. But yeah, I would say knowledge, mentoring, that's your number one priority, because then if you get your first job, even if it's not that great, you get your second job and you learn a lot. In 2 years you can learn so much that you can get the job in almost any company in the world, and that's gonna be like the best return of investment is your knowledge at the end.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with everything you said. Dweez, you have anything to add on, or you want to add on? No?
No, I don't have anything.
Cool. Yeah. The second part of that question was, do you have to do things outside your job to continually strengthen your skills? And I just want to add, like, definitely, like, reading a lot helps. Like building up that habit of reading, like, the more dense kind of books. Like, for example, there's a lot of books on like designing systems, for example, and if you don't know a particular subject and you're interested in it, like if you just joined a new job and a big part of your role is working with like databases and you have no idea like what you're doing and you don't understand like database concepts, then building that habit to like go outside of your work, like find a good book on it and start reading is insanely helpful. And I mean, every single person that I've seen like succeed in tech is a pretty avid reader and will gain knowledge through books and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty important. Obviously, there's other things like working on side projects, looking at new technologies, understanding them, things like that. That's pretty important as well. But yeah, I think we can kind of wrap things up here. So we're here every single Wednesday at 9:30 Pacific time. And any questions that weren't answered, we've, written them down in one way or another, so we'll definitely get to them. And yeah, we've definitely enjoyed answering your questions. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week for another live stream. Yeah, from my end, thank you so much to Dweez and Dom. Definitely appreciated you guys' answers. You guys
Thank you.
answers. So excited to be back with you guys next week. You guys have anything to say to our awesome viewers?
Yeah, thanks everyone for attention, for gifts, and yeah, see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.